Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Tuesday, May 30th, 2023. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide you in this broadcast, you can go to weather.gov. That is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S., Alaska, Hawaii to the lower left. You can also get information for American Samoa, as well as Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And on the weather map here for the continental U.S. this Tuesday afternoon, we have air quality alerts around various areas of the Great Lakes. Temperatures up near 90 degrees at Milwaukee and Chicago. Also along areas of the eastern seaboard, severe thunderstorm watches, western Nebraska, eastern Colorado, western Kansas down into the Texas-Oklahoma panhandle. Even red flag warnings for critical fire weather conditions in southwest New Mexico, and flood watches due to flash flooding potential from heavy thunderstorm rains over burn scars in the eastern Sierra Mountains. But here in Alaska, flood warnings continue at Stevens Village on the Yukon River and all the way downstream in the lower Yukon at Imanak and Alakanut. And flood advisories remain in effect on the lower Yukon from Grayling down to the Delta. But the good news is the shore-fast ice that was along the Delta there, all the volume of heavy runoff water coming through the braided delta of the Yukon has broke open some of that. I'll hopefully be able to show you that on a satellite image coming up here in just a moment. The Salcha River Basin east of Fairbanks now is under a flood watch for additional rainfall that's going to come tonight into Wednesday. Already some areas have picked up well over an inch of rainfall through the Memorial Day weekend in that area. And when we factor in already the heavy runoff from snowmelt, it just makes the flooding more likely. Also, a winter weather advisory, 2 to as much as 4 inches of snow could fall in portions of the northern Copper River Basin. Already some snow reported this Tuesday morning in those areas. So Imanak there in the Delta, overcast skies, finally got the camera back at the airport site. Overcast, cool temperatures only in the mid-30s. And again, at least the threat of ice jam flooding has greatly diminished with that shore-fast ice busting out. Mentasta Pass in the eastern Alaska range, you can see hints of some wet snowfall that occurred there. Temperature at 36 as of early afternoon, and some additional snow could fall there tonight into Wednesday. And then Chitna, also seeing cloudy skies with areas of rain, and some additional rain will be falling there as well in the lower Copper River Basin. Temperature at 48. Klawak in the southern panhandle, scattered light showers, 48 degrees. And so again, it's been rather cool across the entire state. Here are the current, at least weather-related advisories. The area in blue indicates just where additional rainfall and cool temperatures will occur. Central, east central interior. And then winter weather advisory, especially Glen Ellen north to about the Tok cutoff, including places like around Isabel, Mentasta Passes could pick up some wet additional snowfall tonight into the day on Wednesday. These are the flood advisories from Grayling down to the Delta, and then we still have a flood warning at Stevens Village and back here toward Imanak and Alakanut. But here again, that's where we still have advisories in effect across the lower Yukon Delta. Again, the newer flood watch that was just issued for the Salcha River Basin there east of Fairbanks, due to the fact that perhaps another inch or a bit more of rain could fall tonight into Wednesday. And here on this particular image, you can see right here, look here and here. These are the two of the main braids of the Yukon River. Watch that ice break out. Boom, right there. and right in through here. So very heavy outflow coming from the Yukon River with all of the snow melt working its way down through the system. So that's good news. At least that reduces the threat of any ice jams occurring at the mouth of the river and then backing up. So that is good news there. But again, anyone along any of the major river systems in the state, water levels are not going to come down anytime soon. Snowmelt flooding will continue to be a problem. Lowland flooding will continue to be a problem. It's going to be a very slow process over the next week or two. So just going to have to be very patient and cautious as that time comes. Fire danger, though, has been greatly reduced across much of the state. Areas that were in very high category now are at low because of the rain, the cloud cover, the cooler temperatures. Winds have not been all that strong either. So at least that's one good effect of this pattern that we've been in. Satellite imagery shows a circulation of low pressure here over the Gulf. There's that batch of moisture that came up and brought just rather lousy conditions for Memorial Day weekend. Anyone hoping to get out and recreate with sunshine and warm temperatures, that's not going to happen. There's more moisture being pulled back up across this region, the Copper River Basin, and up toward the lower middle Tanana Valley. So as a result, there's going to be more rainfall. Meanwhile, the backside of it, colder air has come down along the west side of the state and has helped to spin up this low again, reinforcing it over Bristol Bay. And there's yet another cold front coming out of the eastern Russian coast and Arctic Ocean that's going to be pushing east-southeastward, providing a reinforcing shot of cool air. And here is on the weather map late tonight, early on Wednesday morning, the low emerges south of Kodiak Island. The other low that was in the Gulf kind of lifts northward and weakens with a trough along the outer coast of the Panhandle. And here comes that secondary cold front, bringing in a reinforcing shot of colder air. This is going to work its way east and could actually produce 2 to as much as 5 inches of snow along the Dalton Highway as you go through Adigan Pass Thursday night into Friday morning. And here comes that, here's that reinforcing shot of cooler air coming in later on Wednesday. The low sitting there just southwest of the Gulf. And then on Thursday, here comes that next system that could bring the snowfall there into areas of the Brooks Range and the higher elevations and passes there of the Dalton Highway. Low pressure should stay centered just south of the Gulf on Thursday, but still cool weather will prevail across much of the state with areas of scattered light precipitation in the south and areas of the Panhandle as well. Wednesday, low temperatures above 40, generally speaking. Same thing south central, not a bunch of change, but it's the daytime highs. We should be up near 60 or better. Not going to happen. 50s at best, low mid-50s Panhandle, and low mid-50s at best in areas around, lower Susitna Valley, Anchorage Bowl. Very similar temperatures at night, generally staying just above 40 to, say, 45 degrees. Daytime highs maybe squeaking out near 60 again at Haines, Skagway. Maybe Glen Ellen get a little break in the cloud cover there Thursday, but we're not seeing any big jumps in temperature yet. And across the Yukon River Basin, temperatures remain above freezing, especially mid-river on up toward the Alcan border. Below freezing along the Arctic coast, especially Utqiagvik down to the north side of the Seward Peninsula. And Wednesday afternoon highs only in the 50s at best, low mid-50s at, say, Fairbanks, Yukon Flats. Other areas only in the 40s. May not reach quite freezing along the northwest coast and, again, the northern Seward Peninsula. And then morning low temperatures generally near 40, upper 30s near 40 along the Yukon River and below freezing there in the far north. And temperatures only in the 50s, maybe a 60-degree reading, nearing 60 there at Eagle and Fort Yukon. For the southwest interior, low temperatures near freezing along the Yukon Delta, and temperatures only near 40 there on Wednesday afternoon, maybe some 50s going up the Kuskokwim River, Bethel to Anvik. And then as we look at what we got going on here Thursday morning, lows should generally be a bit above freezing, and then temperatures may try to warm a little more. McGrath down towards, say, Dillingham could get mid-upper 50s for highs. Temperatures are expected to average a bit above normal here across the west and northern parts of the state June 5th through the 9th, and also over the areas of the central southern Panhandle, but cooler than normal in the southwest, and precipitation may average a bit above normal, mainly across the south and western portions of the mainland.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Let's take a look now at your aviation weather. If you have a flight planned either on Wednesday or Thursday for midweek, rather extensive areas of IFR anticipated along the North Slope, Arctic coast, down into the lower Chukchi coastline, North Seward Peninsula as a result of a cold front that's pushed inland. We also have a secondary shot of cooler air that's going to work its way gradually eastward. Areas of the eastern half of the Alaska Range, some of the hill country up the Tanana Valley and along north side of Prince William Sound, IFR rather extensive. There's been a lot of moisture, areas of low cloudiness, rain and snow in the mid and higher elevations. Areas of the intercoastal mountains of the Panhandle can also see IFR, including the north end at Chilkoot and White, and then areas along and east of Kodiak Island. We also see a broad area of IFR for the central and western Aleutians. Wednesday afternoon, we still see IFR conditions holding along the eastern Arctic coastline from east of Deadhorse to Kaktovik, areas of the Wrangell-St. Elias Mountains just inland from the north central Gulf Coast, and then a broad area of IFR conditions just west of St. Lawrence and including St. Matthew all the way back down through the central and western Aleutians. Thursday morning, IFR conditions prevail along the spine of the Brooks Range there, the central eastern portions, the eastern half of the North Slope and the eastern Arctic coast. Still areas of IFR around the Wrangell-St. Elias Mountains and then also the far northern Panhandle. We also see IFR conditions around Shishmaref and then from St. Lawrence, Nunavik Island, the Yukon Delta westward through St. Matthew and again across the central western Aleutians. For Thursday afternoon, some relaxation in the IFR conditions, more in the way of MVFR out over the Gulf, far northern Panhandle, MVFR along the central eastern spine of the Brooks Range, and then we have IFR conditions still hugging near and west of the Yukon Delta, and then back out from St. Matthew down through the central Bering into the central Aleutians. Rather widespread IFR conditions are anticipated. For Wednesday, Anaktuvik Pass, MVFR conditions will prevail, though as you fly further north across the North Slope, IFR there. Same thing, Adigan Pass, generally MVFR conditions through the pass, but once you emerge on the north side and flying through the North Slope, IFR conditions will rule there. The Alaska Range, we're going to start out with IFR conditions trying to give way to MVFR, especially at Lake Clark, and then up through Rainy Pass and through the central Alaska Range. At Windy Pass, IFR will become MVFR later in the morning and afternoon, and as we go further east of there, Isabel, on over to Mentasta Pass, we expect IFR conditions to be prevalent there early in the day, trying to give way to MVFR. And as you fly south of Mentasta Pass through the Copper River Basin, IFR conditions will generally hold through the day. Tanita Pass should generally see IFR conditions become MVFR later morning and afternoon. Portage Pass also starting IFR, becoming MVFR late morning and into the afternoon. Chilkoot and White in the northern Panhandle, IFR conditions there start out the day giving way to MVFR. Freezing levels aloft are highest here out through the central western Aleutians, generally above 8,000 feet. There's another frontal system that'll be pushing eastward from there. Colder pocket of air, 2,000 feet or lower, centered over the Alaska Peninsula and North Pacific side there. Cooler air all along the southwest, western, northwestern coast, Chukchi Sea, Norton Sound, and then also a pocket of cooler air over the inner coastal mountains of the northern Gulf and Panhandle. Slight bump in freezing levels off into the Yukon. And the greatest threat for icing will be in eastern areas of the mainland and the far southern Panhandle. Perhaps above 4,000 feet along the central eastern Brooks Range, above 8,000 feet the hill country east of Fairbanks and down across the eastern half of the Alaska Range and then the Copper River Basin. Also, areas of the southern Panhandle could see some considerable moderate icing in the heavier showers and thicker cloud cover above 5,000 feet. Jet stream level winds strongest out of the northwest here along the Chukchi Sea and toward the Seward Peninsula. A couple areas of low pressure from the northeastern Gulf to south of there, and then at 9,000 feet, 700 millibars still abroad, 40, 45 knot northwest to west winds along the west and southwest coasts and then cutting across the Alaska Peninsula. And we have a low-pressure circulation at 3,000 feet just southwest of the Gulf and southeast of Kodiak Island. Greatest threat for any turbulence on Wednesday will be over the lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula, surface to 4,000 feet, and then back toward the central and western Aleutians from the surface to 3,000 feet, and then a little pocket up there along the northwest coast around Point Hope.
Hello, I'm a GOES-R series weather satellite orbiting 22,000 miles above Earth. I can see a lot of cool stuff from up here, and I take pictures of it with my spiffy camera that has 16 different settings. I have such good eyesight, I can see clouds, snow, smoke, smog, and ash, so I can warn you about dangerous conditions and help you avoid them. When storms are brewing, I watch them closely and help with hurricane, tornado, and flood warnings to help keep you safe. And my lightning mapper tracks lightning strikes way up in the sky, even through dark, dense clouds. I also help with search and rescue missions. I listen for distress signals from emergency beacons and tell search and rescue teams just where to find people who need help. But even when I'm keeping a close eye on Earth, I'm monitoring weather out here in space, too. I watch the sun for big bursts of energy, which send waves of radiation toward Earth that can affect power grids, block communication with planes, cause errors in GPS, and damage satellites. Space weather is also very dangerous for astronauts working outside the International Space Station. I warn them so they can get inside where they'll be safe. So the next time you watch a weather report or check your phone for the forecast, remember, that's me. So look to the sky and wave. I'll be here. Things are looking pretty bad down there. But don't worry. I'm going to give weather forecasters a heads up and help you stay safe. I'm a GOES-R series weather satellite, and one of my jobs is to keep an eye on Earth's weather as I orbit above. But I'm 22,000 miles above Earth. How does your local weather forecaster know what I see all the way up here? First, I have to figure out what's going on. I point my special camera at the Earth and take pictures of the clouds I see below. My pictures show where the clouds are, but I also take lots of other notes about the clouds. For example, how high they reach into the atmosphere, how much rain they might cause, and when a severe storm may be forming. But I can't keep all of this information to myself. I have to share it with weather forecasters down on Earth. A big antenna is waiting for my call. Since I'm a satellite, I send my pictures and notes in a computer language of ones and zeros. Luckily, the antenna speaks my language. Computers connected to the antenna organize my notes and combine all of the pictures and cloud information and translate them into weather maps. They send a version of the maps back up to me. I'll hold on to these for later. Another copy of the maps is split into smaller pieces. This helps the maps move faster from one place to another. The map pieces are then sent for processing before being sent back up in the sky to a communication satellite. From there, the maps are picked up by antennas at the National Weather Service forecast offices in each region. There are more than 100 offices. I also take the maps that I received and send them out to companies that specialize in making the maps more colorful and better for viewing on TVs and computers. The colorful maps and the maps from the forecast offices then go to your local weather forecaster. The forecaster combines the information information from these maps with lots of other information, like model forecast data and radar data, to make predictions about the upcoming weather in your area. And that's how I help you find out if bad weather is going to ruin your afternoon plans. You're welcome. Soon it will be my time to shine in outer space. I'm the GOES-R satellite. That stands for Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite. And the R stands for my order in this series of weather satellites. Like my older siblings before me, I'll do a lot for watching weather, but I'm pretty special because I have a lot of new gadgets. I'm originally from Colorado, but my journey to space has a few stops along the way. I'll be shipped in a very special satellite shipping container to Kennedy Space Center. Moving me around is not easy. I'm over 18 feet wide and weigh 6,000 pounds. And then things get really exciting. I get loaded onto an Atlas V541 launch vehicle, a big rocket. Woo! After Atlas and I blast off together, my compartment separates from the launch vehicle and I continue to climb higher and higher. Then I break away completely and unfurl my solar panel and antenna. After that, I have to use my thrusters to get into just the right position, 22,000 miles above the ground and traveling 1.9 miles per second to keep up with Earth's rotation. And then I can officially start my job along with my fellow GOES sisters, where I take advanced pictures for more accurate weather forecasts, map lightning in real time, and improve the monitoring of the sun's activity. It's going to be so awesome! I can't wait!
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and starting with the sea ice, we have areas beginning to really open up now across the Chukchi Sea and off of the northwest coast, west of Wainwright, Point Lay, down off of Cape Lisburne, as well as here through the lower Chukchi Sea into the Bering Strait. Still some pack ice there, though, between the mainland, the west side of the Seward, and to the east side of St. Lawrence Island, and the ice continues to shrink, at least the remaining pack ice there in Norton Sound, and some water opening up along the east side. Further south, the pack ice in through the north-central Bering is also further shrinking, and we saw, I showed you earlier, satellite image of the shorefast ice, the push of water coming out of the braided sections of the Yukon Delta have finally broke through that shorefast ice, so that should really alleviate the threat of ice jam flooding there right in the lower Delta. As far as marine forecast on Wednesday for the Panhandle, look for southeast to south winds 15 to 20 knots, waves 3 to maybe as much as 4 feet in Lynn Canal. The outer coast winds will be south to southeast 15 to 20 knots with waves generally running 5 to 6 feet within 5 nautical miles or 15 nautical miles of shore. And then on Thursday, winds are going to be southeast to east, inner channels 10 knots, mid and upper channels, but down here toward Dixon Entrance, southeast 20 knots. And for the outer coast, near shore waters, winds will generally be southeast to east 20 to 25 knots from off of Craig to west of Gustavus, but look for more of a north to east southeasterly component to the wind at 15 knots out of Yakutat Bay with waves there 5 to 6 feet. For the northwestern Gulf, we've had just lighter winds going to be the case here through midweek, around 10 knots and variable within Prince William Sound and off of the Kenai. Within Cook Inlet, winds will be southwesterly in the low end, south to southwest 20 knots as we go up west of Anchor Point and on up toward the north end, with waves generally running 3 to as high as 4 or 5 feet. On Thursday, not much change off of the Kenai coast or within the areas around Prince William Sound and leading into Cordova and Valdez. We are looking at variable winds around 10 knots, waves a couple of feet. And within Cook Inlet, generally south-southwest winds 15 to 20 knots with waves of 3 to maybe as high as 4 feet there west of Anchor Point. Northeast winds across Kodiak Island on Thursday, only 15 knots with 4-foot waves. And then across the Alaska Peninsula, winds will generally be out of the northwest around 20 to 25 knots, except for maybe as high as 30 knots northwesterly there south and southeast of Falls Pass. Waves 2 to 4 feet on the North Pacific side and 5 to perhaps as high as 9 feet north there of Cold Bay. And for Thursday, winds will be a mixed bag. Southwest 15 knots within Shelikof Strait, 10 knots around Kodiak Island, and then generally westerly component to the wind, 15 to 20 knots across the peninsula with waves of 2 to 4 feet on the North Pacific side and near 4 feet on the Bering side. Across the Alaska Peninsula on Wednesday, a ridge of high pressure will be pushing through. East side of the ridge, we have winds out of the north-northwest around 20 knots, maybe as high as 30 knots, south and east of Dutch Harbor. And then further west, the winds go back toward the southeast from the central Aleutians into the western Aleutians and pick up to 30 knots from the southeast west of Adak. And waves will generally be running 3-4 feet the central eastern Aleutians on the Pacific side and 3 to maybe as high as 8 feet back there toward Dutch Harbor. And across the region on Thursday, a mixed bag of winds will be southeasterly, strongest through the middle Aleutians as we get west of Nikolsky, upwards of 30 knots in the vicinity of Atka, with waves there 5 feet on the Bering side, 8 feet on the North Pacific side, and then winds will try to turn back toward the southwest and west around 20 to 25 knots across the western half of the Aleutians. For the southwest coast, winds generally northwesterly along the coast, 15 to 20 knots, 20 knots within there of Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays. Waves where there is open water, 3 to 4 feet, generally speaking. More of a westerly wind at St. Matthew at 20 knots with 6-foot waves. And then for Thursday, winds will have a west to southerly component, 15 to 20 knots from Norton Sound down into the lower Yukon Delta, and then look for winds as high as 25 knots from the southwest in the vicinity of St. Matthew with 6-foot waves. Across much of the Arctic down through the Chukchi Sea coastline, we have winds out of the northwest 15 to 20 knots Wednesday, and then shifting more northerly 15 knots on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. Waves could be as high as 3 to 4 feet. And then on Thursday, easterly winds 20 to 25 knots along the Arctic coast, becoming northerly in the lower Chukchi Sea at 15 knots.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.